In November 2022, the internet went wild over a video showing a river of live fish flowing down a sandy road. Apart from a little water around the fish themselves, there wasn't a drop of moisture nearby. The exact number of fish in this stream wasn't known, but it was estimated to be in the thousands. The editorial team at Newsweek reached out to the creator of the video to figure out what was going on with those fish, but the guy himself was baffled. However, once the clip went viral, other users started pitching in their theories, and some of them actually sound plausible. Of course, we won't discuss the possibility that the guy could have just run to the beginning of this fish slide and filmed everything on a larger scale, but what's the point of that, right? Oh well. First off, it's possible that a lake overflowed somewhere, taking the fish along with it. You know how it goes during floods. Water starts looking for new paths and carries everything in its way, including the fish. It's pretty simple. Another possibility is that a fish-hauling tanker truck had a leak en route. However, that scenario seems unlikely because the fish would have simply spilled out in a pile near the leak. Since the fish in the video still appear to be alive, albeit clearly not doing well, we can assume that whatever happened, it happened recently. It's not like fish have a lot of time when they're out of water. At any rate, this one doesn't. However, there are species that not only learn to survive when their water source dries up, but also can move around on land in search of a new home by their own choice. Even though they act nothing like fish, they're still considered fish. How did this happen? Let's figure it out. Remember to give this video a thumbs up because forgetting isn't cool. Remembering's the way to go. It's that simple. When I was searching for an idea for this video, I thought it might end up being a bunch of old stuff or not really exciting, but I've never been so wrong in my life. Meet the representative of the armored catfish family. These funky, flattened fish live in Central and South America in all sorts of places, fast rivers, underground lakes, and even completely isolated bodies of water on the surface, which is what we're interested in. Any isolated spot comes with challenges as resources such as food and oxygen might dwindle, not to mention the risk of these water bodies drying up. When something like this happens, armored catfish can simply crawl onto land and head off to find another body of water. Now that's what I call stepping out of your comfort zone. Trying to find the right place to live, a catfish can crawl on land for hours, leaving a fancy trail behind. But time is still ticking because a fish is still a fish. If a catfish doesn't find a body of water, it'll surely die. The good news is, evolution equipped these fish with special taste receptors that can detect compounds indicating the proximity and quality of water. Thanks to these, catfish understand where to crawl. Also, catfish have a unique body structure that makes them one of the fastest fish on land, simply because they're stiffer. Less flexibility means easier crawling. Over on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean in hot Africa live some even weirder fish. They're called lungfish. Think of it as a step in the evolution from breathing underwater to breathing air. This is how lungfish deal with living in low oxygen water or drying out ponds. So they develop this bulging gut, kind of like a swim bladder other fish have. This gut acts as a lung. Yeah, these fish breathe through their gut. Why not? Normally, lungfish breathe underwater using their gills, but when the temperature rises and their water habitat disappears, they dig tunnels underground and form a skin layer that holds moisture while still letting enough air through for them to keep breathing. It's like they're making a cozy cocoon without water, helping them survive a drought that would be deadly for most water creatures. But it's not just about the cocoon. There's more to their survival secret. They can't just lie around and wait. Buried lungfish show a behavior called estivation. They slow down their metabolism during long periods of heat or drought, taking naps until things get better. And this until can last a very long time. Some sources claim that the African lungfish can sleep like this out of water for 3 to 5 years without any food, and only wakes up when it gets moist enough outside its cocoon. Additionally, these fish can move on land using their hind limbs to push off the ground and crawl forward. It might seem crazy, but it's believed that lungfish are related to the first creatures to crawl out of the water and conquer land. Looking at their skeleton, you wouldn't think they could walk at all, but they do. And it seems like that's where our terrestrial evolution really kicked off. But let's jump back to now, because I'm intrigued about how fish orient themselves in space. Apart from the receptors we mentioned earlier, there's got to be something else going on, right? What about their vision? It's likely that fish living out of water rely heavily on their vision to navigate their surroundings. This is mainly because their eyes don't need any special adaptations to work on land. Of course, the way light bends in air is different from water. Human eyes are built for seeing on land. So when we open our eyes underwater without goggles, everything seems blurry. We still see colors and shapes, but it's hard for us to make out specific objects. Fish, on the other hand, probably see things the opposite way. They pick up the basic visual cues outside water, like reflections, colors, and shapes, which can help them find a water source or safe spot, but they might struggle to recognize unfamiliar objects or animals, which is a real issue when there are plenty of predators around. How do you figure out if that blurry blob up ahead is planning to gobble you up if you've never seen such blurry blobs before? But there's also something called the inner ear. It's a common way for land animals to find their way downhill to water. However, the inner ear can only give fish a limited amount of information, and it's totally useless on flat ground. Certain fish can also use their sense of taste and smell, called chemoreception, to find food by detecting tasty amino acids or to steer clear of poor quality water. But we still don't know much about how fish employ these senses when they're out of water, so we'll have to wait. But getting out of one pond, finding your way to another, and taking a dive there is one thing, but how about a journey stretching hundreds of miles? Well, that's exactly what the tiny desert goby fish does. These little guys call Lake Eyre home, right in the dry deserts of South Australia. Well, calling this place home might be a stretch. They survive in these muddy puddles with salt levels 3 times higher than the ocean, where the water temperature averages a toasty 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Nobody's lining up for a swim there, and these fish have to gulp air through their mouths just to get enough oxygen on dry land. In reality, they're not great swimmers, but they feel quite comfortable on land and even come out of the water to cool off. Just think about that. Even though gobies' habitats are typically filled by groundwater, they can still occasionally dry out. When this happens, a trickle of water is all the gobies need. They move from one puddle to another to survive and find a mate. This way, they can cover huge distances until they reach their goal. Yes, across the desert. This fish belongs to the pupfish family and thrives in conditions that would kill a trout in a matter of minutes. Well, that's why you won't find trout living in deserts. During the summer, most of this fish's habitat dries up because the daytime temperature rises to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Desert pupfish can survive in water as shallow as half an inch with temperatures reaching up to 91 degrees Fahrenheit. It's barely even a proper water body, and yet they feel completely fine. High temperatures, salinity, and low oxygen levels that'd kill any other fish? Not a problem. Let's just live and breed in this lovely hot puddle. The hottest and driest desert in North America is the Colorado Desert. Here lives the desert pupfish. It doesn't just manage to survive, but actually lives. It can handle water twice as salty as the ocean, endure droughts of up to several weeks without any water, and feel just fine. Exactly how the desert pupfish pulls off all this isn't entirely clear yet. Scientists are still figuring it out. However, they found out that this little fish used to live in regular temperature water because there used to be a big, cool lake where it lives now. Then everything changed suddenly, and to survive, the fish had to get really adaptable. Pretty quickly, it learned to switch up its breathing, and to put it simply, it can hold its breath for a whole 5 hours. Now you might be wondering, how do fish end up in the deserts in the first place? Well, there are essentially 2 reasons. Let's talk about the first case, a desert pupfish. These fish have stuck around in oasis waters since back when the desert wasn't all desert. Then the climate changed, wiping out most of the pond's creatures. But a few managed to adapt and now go by the name oasis fish. Another reason is fish being carried by other animals. A good example is a lake that popped up right in the middle of the desert in the UAE. It formed just a few years ago, simply seeping up from underground water. Of course, humans had a hand in it too. Here's how it works. A desalination plant right on the coast takes salty water from the Persian Gulf and turns it into drinking water. Then the water gets pumped inland to the city of Al Ain. Local folks drink it, use it for washing up, and then it goes down the drain. Once the water's treated, it cycles back into the city and is used for watering parks, gardens, and similar areas. From there, it seeps into the groundwater and eventually finds its way to the desert. Naturally, there weren't any fish originally, but birds started gathering around the water source. They flew in from elsewhere and carried fish eggs on their feet, which later hatched and kick-started a new population of desert fish. Out of all the fish that can survive in desert conditions, the Garabaramia amaze me the most. They're part of the carp family and are found in the mountains of northern Oman and the United Arab Emirates. Basically, it's pretty hot over there. These fish live in gravel or rocky bodies of water, like springs or small streams where there's always a risk of their home drying up. If their water starts to run low, they can survive by burying themselves in damp gravel. Sometimes they've even been seen hopping across wet rocks, climbing steep wet cliffs, or hanging out near waterfalls, looking for a new spot. What's so special about it, you might ask? And you'd be right, because essentially that's how most of the heroes in our video live, by spreading out along the rocks. They don't wait for droughts to find a better spot, instead they plan ahead. Sometimes they even swim upstream to settle in any available water and can climb rocks up to 9 feet high. Such peculiar behavior actually saves the lives of an entire species. If they didn't act this way, they would have vanished ages ago. It's pretty straightforward. Spreading out into as many different water sources as they can while they're available, they greatly improve their chances of survival. Someone's habitat won't dry out completely, and someone else will reproduce, and so the cycle continues. Studies carried out in other deserts with different fish species confirm this. To stay alive in the long term, fish must always monitor the presence of water in their surroundings. It's a survival strategy many fish adopt in dry areas. They constantly move between different water sources during brief floods. Even though I imagine this lifestyle to be pretty darn exhausting, the fish somehow make it work. They even reproduce, and some aren't even considered vulnerable species. Who knows? Maybe after a global disaster, desert fish will rule the earth alongside tardigrades. Finished watching? I need your like. See you later.